Good evening, everybody. I want to be thoughtful of everyone's time, and I want to thank you all for joining us for our fifth public webinar for New Directions 2040, the update to the St. Tammany Parish Comprehensive Plan. And just to give you a brief run through of what today's meeting is going to look like, we're going to start off with welcome and introductions, and then I'll go into the project overview and engagement summary. After that, we'll discuss draft vision, principles, and goals, where I'll hand it off to Matt. And then we'll leave approximately 55 minutes open for question and answer and discussion on the vision, principles, and goals. And with that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Noor Gadanfar. I'm a senior planner with Assecore Robinson, and I've been the deputy project manager for New Directions 2040. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Noor. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Rufo. I am the project manager for the consultant team here, and excited to share with you the draft vision statement as well as principles and goals this evening. Thank you, Noor.
Great. And I know that we have Helen on from the parish government. So Helen, I don't know if you'd like to introduce yourself and say hello.
Hello, this is Helen Lambert. I'm here representing the parish from St. Tammany Parish. I'm the assistant director for the planning department.
Great. So we can go ahead and get started. So first, a little bit about the project timeline. We have been working with the parish on New Directions 2040 since early September. And the way that we've organized the plan is initially in 3 phases. The first phase, which is the understand phase, was really getting to know, the parish, looking a lot into trends, historically, what's taken place, a lot of economic, social, and socioeconomic trends. And we've also launched our community engagement during that phase. So we had 4 of our webinars, we had our first steering committee, we had our first presentation to the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as a number of pop-up events in the actual parish. The second phase is the envision phase, which is the phase that we're currently in. And in this phase is where we've taken up all the information that we've compiled during the first phase, which includes, looking at a lot of different statistics, stakeholder interviews, and then putting that together into a vision that we've heard from stakeholders around the parish. And so we're also holding a number of different steering committee meetings, first presenting the vision and goals and principles, which we'll be presenting today, and then looking at a number of different growth scenarios. We're also working with the public and also showcasing what happens, what we found when it comes to the vision and goals, as well as hopefully being able to host in-person growth workshops with the public so they can see what's happening. And then finally, in the ACT phase, we'll be hopefully publishing the final plan and presenting that to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then hopefully reading that into council. So the first thing that I wanted to point out is our parish profile is up and available to everybody. It's on our website. You can access it if you go on to www.newdirections2040.com. You can also scan the barcode using your phone to be able to access the parish profile. And it's really just, as I mentioned, looking at the social, economic, environmental trends that really make St. Tammany unique, and publishing that information in a document that allows us to really understand the foundation for New Directions 2040. And with that, I've mentioned the website. The website really is the gateway for all the information about the project. It's where we post all our surveys, all our engagement tools, the actual vision, goals, and principles document. And so we encourage everybody to periodically check into the New Directions 2040 website and see, how the plan's being updated, what phase we're in, because we regularly update that. And from the website itself, you can also sign up and sign up to our newsletter, which will, we send out one approximately every 1 to 2 weeks, just telling people, where we are in the process, what's going on in the parish, maybe ask you for some feedback and present some documents that we've published. And so we just wanted to give a brief update with regards to engagement numbers as of April 12th. When we look at the website, we can see we've had almost 4,500 unique website visitors, which is great. We've had approximately 430 newsletter subscribers. 116 of you have tuned into these public meetings, but of course, all of our virtual meetings are published online, and so they're accessible after the fact. And so we haven't been able to count the number of people who've gone in and watched the public meeting afterwards. And then we've approximately counted around 75 people who've attended our pop-up events, which we had 4 back in November. And from the first phase of the engagement process, we had 200 people take surveys. We interviewed 55 different stakeholders. We had 4 newsletters released. 121 pins were placed on a map, whether virtual or in person, and 222 ideas were expressed, which is great. But we look forward to continuing this engagement, and hopefully everybody attending this meeting, if you can share the website, subscribe to the newsletter, this entire plan is based on engagement and what we hear back from the public. And we hope that you can share this with your network, with your friends and your family as well. And so here, looking just at engagement by zip code, this is specifically for the ideas board, for the maps, and for the surveys taken. We were able to collect the zip code people currently live in, and you can see here where the largest concentration of engagement have been, primarily around Covington, Mandeville, Madisonville. But again, there are lots of, around Lacombe, there have been a lot of engagement. And we can see really a lot of the parish has responded, which is what we want to see. Now, when it comes to really looking at, the vision of what we want New Directions 2040 to be, we wanted to share a couple of results from our visioning survey, hopefully, which many of you were able to take in late November up to late January. So the first question was, name 3 words that help describe your vision of St. Tammany Parish and what you want to see in the future. And so we can see here from this word cloud that a lot of the words that people want to see, safe, family, growth, friendly, green, and clean. And so, this really sets the foundation of, people's expectations of the future in St. Tammany. And then when we ask them, of course, we've heard St. Tammany has a great quality of life, but what does that really mean to you? Again, we see repeated patterns where people really think safety is a very key aspect, where the environment and outdoors plays a really large part, the small town feel and community family, as well as education. And so we can see, okay, we're getting very, we're building upon this theme that we're getting. And then finally, what do you love about St. Tammany Parish and what makes it so special? Again, the whole small town feel, the environment, the outdoors, the community and family. And as you can see, hopefully in the principles and goals, a lot of this is reflected because this is what we heard from you. So interestingly here, we asked a question, how do you feel about St. Tammany Parish's growth and development? And 60% of you, so 3 out of 5 answered that development should slow down until infrastructure issues are solved. 33%, so approximately a third, said development should continue, but it should be coordinated better with infrastructure. And then finally, around 6% said that development is on the right track and should continue as it has been the last 20 years. So we're getting a feel where people feel that development might be moving a little too fast, and so it should slow down, it should be better coordinated. And so what are the tangible steps that we can take to make sure that that happens? And then finally, we took a look at the priorities in order of importance for public investment over the next 20 years. So this question really asked people to rank their preference in what they want to see in priorities. And we took those rankings and we weighted them. Each one was given a specific weight, and we added all this to combine into the graph that you see in front of you. So primarily, the biggest priority for most people was improvements to drainage infrastructure. The second one was the expansion of recreation, educational, and cultural facilities. The third was maintenance and improvements of existing sewage and drinking water infrastructure for current development. The fourth was construction of connector roads to create a network of east-west, north-south roads. The fifth was the expansion of capacity of existing roads and intersections. And then the sixth was the protection from coastal flooding, storm surge, and low-lying areas. And I want to just be clear that these slides will be available on the website afterwards, so you'll be able to come back and take a look at them after the meeting as well. And with that, I will hand it over to Matt to guide us through the draft vision statement, guiding principles and goals. And I hope that everybody feels comfortable to ask questions in the Q&A forum. And so we'll be able to answer them at the very end. But if you have any questions as we're going through this, don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A.
Great, thank you, Noor. And I'll just spend about 15 or 20 minutes or so presenting these draft statements. So we have plenty of time for discussion and Q&A, but please don't hesitate to start asking questions now. You can use the Q&A or chat features in your Zoom control panel if you're using a computer or your phone, and you should be able to do that. And so, yeah, feel free to post questions at any time. I just want to start off by, before jumping into the draft statements, is present just some of the different factors that go into informing this language. And so Noor has thoroughly covered many of the public input methods that we used and share some of the results from those methods. And so certainly that is the number one driving factor in developing these vision and goal statements. As well as the takeaways from our plus stakeholder interviews and best practices recommended by the American Planning Association, which for over 100 years has been helping American communities develop comprehensive plans to guide development over time. And of course, we don't claim to come in having, all the answers. A lot of good work has been done in the past that we're working to build upon rather than to replace. And so that includes New Directions 2025, the parish's recently created hazard mitigation plan, as well as other plans created by partner agencies such as St. Tammany Corporation's 5-year economic development strategic plan, which is Thrive 2023. And so just to let everyone know that we're working to incorporate many of the recommendations plans, and we'll be citing cases where a comprehensive plan proposed goal really kind of overlaps or even almost is identical to an existing recommendation, one of these other plans that hasn't yet been entirely fulfilled. And so we'll be pointing out those instances. So we're talking about 3 things tonight. We're talking about the vision, the principles that make up that vision, and then a number of goals that follow the principles. And so a vision is broadly a description of what a community desires to become in the long run. Principles are normative statements or statements of standards of intent that underlie the overall strategy, which includes the goals, objectives, policies, and so forth. And then goals are statements of desired outcomes. And so what we've done is gone ahead and tried to, out of all of the different input we've received, is identify a number of different themes within that input. And those are the 7 principles we're sharing. Then of all the more specific outcomes that follow those principles that we've heard people see happen, we've attempted to organize each of those under the 7 different principles. And so the vision is where it starts, though. And so I'll share with you right now the draft statement. Again, want to emphasize over and over again that this is a draft statement. We are providing a status update today. This is yesterday, this document or a version of this document that presents all of the principles and goals is uploaded to the project website now, and you can view it. But again, you know, we have a survey open now, provide some more details on, and so we're really looking for feedback because this is far from set in stone. But the draft statement is that in 2040, St. Tammany Parish is a safe, thriving, and healthy community. Residents and businesses take pride in the parish's good governance, beautiful natural environment, resilient transportation network, and growing businesses, where everyone has the opportunity to enjoy an exceptional quality of life. Louisiana and surrounding Gulf Coast communities view St. Tammany as a leader in sustainable growth and integrated water management. Okay, and so starting there, we've pulled 7 different principles, and we're going to share with you in each of these slides a statement of the principle. Up here in this larger green text, we're going to share with you some exemplary or a good example quotes from either the surveys or the other interviews and the types of input that we were collecting. Then we're going to share a set of goals that fulfill or follow this principle. But governance, really, we have here as number 1 because it really all starts with good decision making. The principle stated here that St. Tammany Parish should foster a culture of excellent governance by trusting relationships between residents, employers, property owners, municipalities, regional and state partners. You know, we heard that, you know, planning and zoning really ought to reflect the wishes of community desires, and that boards and representatives need regular education so that they can make the best, most informed decisions. We also heard folks wanting to see better representation of the diverse, you know, of residents in the parish, and that folks have an opportunity to participate in civic affairs. And so, again, these are examples of the type of input that that inform this principle. The next slide shows a set of goals to follow that principle. Number 1, or our land use decision making will be fair, transparent, and accessible to all parish stakeholders. Our land development policies and processes will be streamlined, efficient, and transparent. And so if you are going to Coop Drive to try to submit a permit and get approval for a project, that should be a very clear and understandable process for you. Our capital projects will be consistent and coordinated with regional infrastructure priorities and with municipalities. So that includes collaborating with folks from Slidell, from Covington, and other local municipalities, as well as with you know, state agencies such as Department of Transportation and Development, or regional agencies like the New Orleans Regional Planning Commission. Accountability is something we heard a lot about, particularly with regard to implementing New Directions 2025, the parish's comprehensive that was adopted about 20 years ago. So this one is focused on, quote, our leaders will be accountable for implementing, updating the comprehensive plan. And 5th, our parish's diversifying population will share high access to civic processes and leadership opportunities. You may notice that the language here is general, it's broad, and that's the intent. Is we were trying to really get on the same page and trying to craft language that everyone agrees is important and presents the priorities. The specifics and how we actually achieve these are the specific strategies and objectives that will be developed in this next phase. But first, we want to make sure that we principles, we got the priorities right, we didn't leave anything out. So I understand some folks out there may be looking at, okay, yeah, of course, this all sounds good, but all right, how are we going to do it? Well, let's first, make sure we're covering all the bases at the high level, and we're going to be working with groups over the next couple of months in our steering committee to refine these and come back to you this summer with more specific objectives to fulfill these. But that's excellent governance. To number 2, we've got 7 here total. So efficient development. This one's all about land use and transport and infrastructure in core two. The principle here is that new development should be sustainable, which means meeting the needs of existing and future residents and businesses. And so not just the future residents as in those who are moving to town in 5 years, perhaps, but are the new generation of residents, our children and our children's children. And so make sure our practices today do not harm the parish that they'll be inheriting in future decades. From folks, commenting on commercial development needing to be better controlled to respect natural spaces and residential areas, and seeing less malls and less sprawl of homes and apartments. An interest in not growing so fast. We don't need to turn into New Orleans. We don't need to compete. We're a different kind of place. And trying to see more types of housing variety built, including attainable or affordable housing. And so goals that follow this principle are presented here. A, meaning that new development and uses will be first and foremost compatible with existing land uses, that we're not going to be permitting harmful land uses as high intensity industrial next to existing established uses that are not compatible with the category. Number two, the adequate infrastructure utilities will be available in areas permitted for new development. And so that there is a mechanism in place, tool for evaluating that prior to say permitting a more intense land use where previously only a lower intensity land use may have been permitted. Number three is a principle in high intensity land use, speaking of those high intensity land uses where maybe you have an industrial use with a lot of truck traffic, or even a large shopping center that generates a lot of vehicle traffic in a day. Locating those near high capacity transportation corridors as a matter of policy. D, attractive, compact, walkable, and mixed use development patterns will be permitted throughout the parish. It's actually illegal in much of the parish to build these types of what we call traditional neighborhood developments, where you can locate, say, a really small neighborhood serving commercial business like a coffee shop or a hair salon or even a doctor's office. Allowing communities to develop like that more organically with a more general mix of uses and allowing compact development. And making that kind of development, really happen anywhere in the parish, because we've heard a lot of desire for that type of development that allows you to walk to get to destinations and ride a bike to get to destinations. E, development will be located away from areas susceptible to severe hazards. And the latest hazard mitigation plan update has provided some really good information on what the most severe hazards are today. It's not just potential coastal storm surge and riverine flooding from heavy rainfall, but even issues of fires, obvious fire hazard zones is of concern. So we're being cognizant of that. Regarding housing, a variety of safe, affordable, and attractive housing types will meet the needs of our community's increasing housing diversity. And so that can apply to, for instance, aging households, seniors who want to age in place and be able to, take care of their everyday needs from their home. But maybe instead of a two-story home, traditional home, maybe there's a need for more accessible homes that can cater to the needs of those types of communities that are growing in our parish. And finally, vacant, blighted, or abandoned properties will be minimal through the encouragement of redevelopment and adaptive reuse, which is essentially saying instead of investors or businesses simply seeking new land to develop, considering and maybe having some kind of public incentives or programs to actually go in and occupy spaces that have already been built but are no longer in use. Okay. I want to talk about business and economy, the prosperous parish. This principle is that the parish should nurture an inclusive, dynamic economy in which businesses and all residents have the opportunity to prosper and thrive. We heard that businesses need to feel welcome and enticed to come to settle here, that we need lots of small businesses and other ideas for things that should open in our growing community. But we need infrastructure to support that. Again, road infrastructure being needing an upgrade in order to also, that's kind of a broader economic issue of just road infrastructure, not only being good for new business, but also serving subdivisions and apartments and making sure that happens before they're approved for construction. So, and we looked at, again, St. Tammany Corporation's 5-year plan to make sure that we're consistent with that and not proposing anything that would conflict with it. But these goals really apply to the parish government as an organization. Letter A is that businesses that employ our residents will be plentiful in St. Tammany and grow with the support of business-friendly governance. The parish will engage and coordinate closely with local, regional, and state economic development partners to unify our resources and leverage them. Living wage jobs, we heard over and over again, are in greater need in the parish so that people don't have to commute out as often. And so living wage jobs will be available to residents of varying skill levels. D, a productive, educated, and competitive workforce will be available to current and potential businesses. E, our parish tax policies will be fair and easy to understand. And finally, adequate land served by supportive infrastructure will be designated for use by businesses and industries seeking to expand, so that when perhaps an outside investor looking for a great piece of land located near an interstate, for example, if they want to be able to come to St. Tammany Parish, that they have a number of different options for places they could situate their investment business. Beyond that, looking at affordable broadband internet service, making that widely available throughout the parish, ensuring that the parish's economic assets are preserved and leveraged to attract and sustain businesses. Locally owned businesses will be plentiful and successful. Our residents and neighborhoods will share equal opportunity to access to the economic benefits of growth, improvement, and development. And finally, our parish economy will be adaptive and able to sustain natural and man-made disasters, whether it's a tropical storm, hurricane, pandemic, ensuring that the parish has the tools it needs to help its businesses recover from those types of shock events. All right, 4, it's halfway through here. Connected networks. Connected and reliable transportation and utility systems should move people, freight, and information safely and efficiently. And so we're talking about transportation, we're talking about moving people. We heard a lot of comments wanting to be able to get around by ways other than driving, bike lanes and paths that are connected to other paths and lanes and that don't stop in the middle of nowhere. Having more connectivity and pedestrian ways, perhaps connecting to the trace, that came up often over and over again. But this principle is really beyond just about getting around the parish, but also all of our utility systems, whether that's electrical, gas, water, and wastewater. So the goals that follow this principle that are proposed are that Goal A, a connected grid of local and state roadways will provide multiple routes to destinations. Again, getting to that network of connectivity. And that roadways and streets are designs for new and upgraded facilities are based on existing and anticipated surrounding land uses. And so if there is a corridor where a lot of development is proposed, is making sure that that roadway is brought up to the appropriate standard before permitting all of that development to actually occur. C, our parish rights of way, streets, essentially, will offer safe, accessible, convenient, and connected facilities for people to walk and bike to destinations, which can be through sidewalks, crosswalks, bikeways, and so forth. Or even using publicly owned utility right-of-ways that aren't streets. In some cases, old railroads, abandoned railroads have been converted, and so the Tammany Trace is a great example of that. Our parish and state-owned roadways will be safely operated with fewer traffic crashes, injuries, and fatalities. pretty self-explanatory there. Our parish transit service will provide convenient service to job centers, healthcare services, and other destinations to households that don't have their own personal vehicles. And F, the Tammany Trace will be protected and extended and serves as the spine of a network of connected off-street trails throughout the parish. Drainage came up quite often, as shown in those survey results that Nora shared earlier. And so we weren't going to get through here without tackling drainage on its own. And this one is centered on a robust and integrated drainage and flood protection system should minimize flood risks across the parish and along its coasts. We heard a lot of comments describing the need for more protection from potential storm surge from the lake, addressing flooding and building responsibly to prevent more flooding, and a lot of concern and fear that continued floods like we've seen in recent years are going to really threaten our ability to grow in the future. It's going to make folks hesitant to invest and move to St. Tammany Parish. And also a call for more non-structured coastal planning, so restoration of wetlands and marshlands along our coastline. This person's referring to a project in Mandeville. So we have a lot of goals for this one, a lot of good ideas coming about here. First and foremost, the parish isn't going to be able to do it all alone, and so collaborative partnerships with federal, state, and private entities will leverage investment in drainage and flood protection infrastructure. And so, we've been in touch with the parish's own levee district, as well as the Coastal Protection Restoration Authority, to get a handle on what the status is of funding of projects that have already been proposed in the Coastal Restoration Master Plan, and looking at what opportunities there are to fully fund those or to identify additional projects. Two preventative structural and non-structural measures will reduce future damage from all different kinds of flooding: riverine, flash flooding, coastal flooding. And so we talk about structural, we're talking about traditional engineering, flood walls and levees and so forth. Non-structural referring to more ecological measures such as marsh restoration. It's not just about building things, it's also about educating our population. And so C is our parish residents, businesses, and stakeholders will be aware of and understand disaster preparedness. This is adapted from the Hazard Mitigation Plan. Also, the next one is as well, sustainable building and land development practices will reduce or eliminate the potential impact of flood hazards. We're not talking about where certain policies will be enacted or what type of areas based on their hydrology or their elevation may receive different types of building standards, but that is certainly a possibility to be explored as we develop strategies to fulfill this goal. Our parish will be resilient and able to rapidly recover and restore facilities and services to the public following flood events. So this kind of overlaps with the last goal of the Prosperous Parish regarding being able to adapt to and recover from shock events. This deals more specifically with all types of facilities, not just businesses, but also public facilities rapidly recovering from major flooding events. F, water management strategies will, be based on our natural systems and address public projects as well as initiatives targeted to individual property owners, adapted from the parish's adaptation strategy. And this is really all about making sure that we're not, that we're working in concert with gravity, working with the way water generally moves in nature, and really kind of trying to rely more on natural systems as well to ensure that water is appropriately drained from property. All right, number 6, I've got 1 minute left, I think, according to our agenda, so I'll make this quick here. Thriving environment, we should keep our natural resources healthy, protected, and resilient. Let's go straight to the goals here to catch up on time. If you don't mind, Nora, going to the next slide. We'll just skip that. And so our waterways, this one is taken almost directly from New Directions 2025, but our waterways and watersheds will be protected, conserved, maintained, and as necessary, restored to reduce the frequency and severity of flooding and to maximize water quality. Our groundwater will be safeguarded to provide an abundant supply of healthy and drinkable water. Our critical and sensitive areas, including native plant and animal habitats, tree resources, and wetlands will be conserved, protected, stable, and flourishing, and noise, light, and air pollution will be minimal. These all really kind of come from, were originally conceived for New Directions 2025, and they remain quite relevant. The fifth one here is based on a best practice provided by APA, which is that innovative energy, building, and transportation technologies will reduce the parish's carbon footprint, such as through adapting, retrofitting publicly owned structures to be more energy efficient, or perhaps encouraging greater travel by walking, biking, transit, those types of strategies, or incentivizing electric vehicles, or all different types of strategies. All right, the last three environmental goals are on-site wastewater treatment installations. This is a big one. Will be upgraded and maintained to meet modern standards, preventing pollution of local water bodies. It's our understanding the parish has the highest number of septic systems in the state. At 65,000 cases of that. Solid waste will be managed and reduced to minimize reliance on landfills for disposal, and recycling will be a common practice across the parish. And then finally, our citizens, including our children, officials, developers, builders, and business leaders, will be well informed of the nature, status, and location of critical and sensitive areas and resources in the parish and the best means of protecting them. And our seventh principle here is focused on healthy communities. Our communities should be attractive places that allow people to live healthy, enriched lives and reach their full potential. And again, we'll skip these voices to stay on time here. People of all ages and backgrounds will feel safe and secure in their homes, neighborhoods, and throughout the public realm, that is just in public on the street. At-risk populations will have access to resources to ensure their health, safety, and basic needs, whether they're seniors, folks with disabilities, veterans, or other folks at a time of need. Our neighborhood design will support physical activity and healthy living for people of all ages and abilities, helping maintain the parish's status as one of the state's healthiest communities. Neighborhoods throughout the parish will share ease of access to public facilities and services, recreation facilities, or good transportation, including schools, healthcare providers, public safety facilities, and libraries. And then finally, our community's culture, history, and traditions will be preserved and strengthened. We heard a lot of support for ensuring that we preserve the parish's architectural heritage. There are a number of historic structures that folks suggested ought to be better protected from future development. Right, I'm going to pause for water there for one moment. And this slide shows each of the 7 principles, again, the draft guiding principles. And we'd love a discussion with you for the rest of our time on this call to really understand do these guiding principles accurately represent the parish's priorities. Is anything missing? Was anything left out or maybe misconstrued? When one person means safety, that can mean something entirely different to another person. So we want to make sure that we're at least getting this correct at the high level. Don't interpret the 1 through 7 as a ranking. We're not trying to suggest that healthy people are less important than a healthy environment. Certainly that's not the case. We're not asking about which is more important to you to the other. We're just trying to make sure that what your priorities are, that we felt like they were heard. And if they weren't heard, we'd love to hear from you about suggestions for improving these. You can
Hi, everyone. I believe that Matt is probably just having a little bit of difficulties with his internet connection. And so I can take it from there. So like Matt was saying, essentially, we've put together these guiding principles and these goals based on what we heard from the community, based on best practices, based on our stakeholder interviews. And so if you feel that, we've done a good job, we've accurately represented these principles, let us know. You can take the survey. You can say that, you feel that these principles are a good reflection of what the parish needs. Same goes for if you feel that they're not a good reflection. And so if you could take the survey, if you could share the survey, as you can see, the community voices section is really what drove a lot of our goals, what drove a lot of our principles. And so, we'd love to hear from you again, and we hope to continue to hear from you for the duration of this project. And so before we get into the Q&A and the guiding principles and the discussion section, I just want to briefly let you know about the project timeline and the next steps. And so in April, we're hosting these 2 public webinars. The first one is today, the second one is tomorrow. And so you are more than welcome to join in on any of our discussion tomorrow. Even if you're here today, if you feel that you might have missed someone who could have attended the meeting today and would be interested in the meeting, let them know about the meeting tomorrow. It's on our website, www.newdirection2040.com/events. In May, what we're really going to be working on is honing in on those goals and developing more, more nuanced objectives and strategies that can help achieve those goals. And then we'll be meeting with our steering committee on May 27th to really discuss these objectives and strategies. And then hopefully we will be able to showcase them to the public. And then in June, we're going to be working on the public workshops that really look at growth scenario planning and, the different scenarios and the different ways that the parish can grow and what that might look like, and really solicit feedback from the community again. And with that, I see Matt is back. And so I think that we can start our Q&A and discussion session if that works for you, Matt.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Noor. Lost internet service, so I'm now using my phone, which thankfully has a data connection. So can you coordinate the Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
So feel free to type in any questions in the Q&A button on your Zoom platform. The first question is from Robert Broom, who is also one of our steering committee members. And he's asking if there are any details on what people want regarding drainage. Most plans he's seen involve levees, but most actual improvements are more modest and focused. And so are there any details available about the type of drainage?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard a ton of different suggestions, everything from, desnag the different scenic rivers that currently are protected from channelization, for instance, turning a natural creek into a concrete slide, for example. With the Scenic Rivers Act, of course, protects St. Tammany Parish, many of its rivers and streams from that. But what we've heard also is that the Army Corps of Engineers makes it really hard even to just get a permit to go in and take out the massive tree trunks that have collected in some of these streams and made drainage really difficult. And so, that's one kind of large scale strategy we've heard suggested, which is to try to get with the Corps and come up with a better process for getting permission to so-called desnag some of these drainage ways. We've also heard suggestions for reforming the development code to require higher proportions of pervious surfaces on developments. So for example, today, a development, if you're going in to construct a home, you may be required to ensure that only, I'm making numbers up now, but only 50% might be pervious. And so the suggestion would be to increase that to 60 or 70%. That's something that's been commonly done in a lot of other communities. And of course, there's always, increasing funding or at least increasing the speed at which the parish spends its funding on identified traditional drainage projects such as building or enhancing ditches and culverts and other traditional drainage infrastructure. We don't have dollar amounts really developed yet on what the backlog is or the required amount unmet need to really fulfill all of the identified projects, but that's something that we'll be digging into in a little bit more detail. So Robert, I hope that answers your question well, but happy to do any more follow-up.
So we have a next question from Nancy Wagner asking, how do we ensure any new plan has the force of law and must be adhered to by the Zoning and Planning Commission as well as the Parish Council?
That's a really good question because it hasn't been fully solved in many places. As far as I know, Orleans Parish in Louisiana is the only community in Louisiana that holds where the land use element actually holds the force of law, meaning that any decisions made regarding changes in zoning or other types of land use regulation decided by the Planning Commission or the Parish Council, or in this case, the New Orleans City Council, that those decisions must be consistent with the future land use map, the land use element of the city's comprehensive plan. And the reason why that is because in 2007, New Orleans voters actually passed a referendum to give the master plan, they call it the master plan. It's essentially the same thing, a comprehensive plan, but to give that the force of law in the parish's charter. Again, my understanding is that there's no other parish in the state that has that force of law that grants it that teeth. The parish code of ordinances does state that the zoning commission and the planning commission have the duty and responsibility to adopt a comprehensive plan, but the code of ordinances does not, nor the charter does not actually explicitly state that all land use decisions must be consistent with it. And so, we're not pretending that we're going to have the option of holding a referendum before this process is over. But what we are going to do is work with, we've committed to the Planning and Zoning Commission to develop sort of a white paper of the different implementation measures that could be available to St. Tammany Parish over the length of this process and in years ahead to give the comprehensive plan more teeth. But really, what's really essential before even creating those laws is just having the public support and the political support to give planning and plans and parish planning documents greater weight and greater influence in future decision making. It's my hope that this plan does not simply sit on a shelf. We don't go into this line of work to do that, certainly. And so we're working very hard to make sure that it's as useful and trusted and filled with the best data and recommendations to give it the weight that it should have over the long term.
I see that some of the what's been inputted into the question and answer form are comments, and I will make sure that if we have time at the end to go back and address these, but I will jump ahead a little bit and read out the questions themselves because some of them are specific questions. And so the next question is going back to your comment on drainage infrastructure. We have a question saying that the Army Corps makes it difficult to clear waterways, and yet they issue 404 wetland permits for areas that are once cleared, and result in more drainage and flooding issues. How can this be addressed?
Yeah, that's true. And it's a great question. We haven't engaged the Army Corps directly us, the project team on this question, but it's something that we'll be definitely exploring more closely with our committee members and parish staff as we get together in working groups to really try to get to the bottom of why this desnagging isn't more easily permitted. And so, unfortunately, I don't have any more of a response than that at this point.
So the next question is about funding. So from Albert, we have a question saying that these guiding principles are wonderful and are what most of all would want. How are we supposed to pay for all this? We have not been able to pass a renewal of taxes for the upkeep of our justice center and parish jail. The renewal has failed for 3 times and will be tried again soon.
Right.
We've also lost Medline, which would have had over a $50 million impact and a huge tax base. Without large business growth, the residential community will be overtaxed and more taxes will not be approved by the voters.
Yep. All great points. So the first point I'll make is that comprehensive plans are not financially constrained, and that's intentional. The idea of a comprehensive plan isn't that you are trying to look at all the resources you have and then come up with the priorities for spending them in the short term. That already happens, or is at least supposed to happen on an annual basis through the parish's capital budget. Every year, the parish looks at what resources it has to spend on a capital project, and then proposes or puts forth a budget that the parish adopts and serves to allocate, appropriate the funding for that. It's a 20-year vision. We're thinking big here, and the reason why it's not typically income or financially constrained is because you don't know what kind of funding opportunities you're going to get sometimes. I don't think any of us could have imagined a year ago that the parish would be getting $50 million out of the American Rescue Plan, because of the federal support for state and local governments in that bill, in the funding formula that came out to $50 million for the parish. And that there will be times where funding becomes available and you hadn't planned on it. But in those situations, it's really useful to have a clear, prioritized plan of action of what needs to be done. It's good to know what your unmet needs are. And so on the one hand, I think there's, of course, a lot of value in budgeting, right? And we're not just trying to create a wish list. We're not going to, try to, I think, set expectations unrealistically high. But at the same time, we don't want to limit ourselves by thinking too short term and too narrowly. But a comprehensive plan can be a useful tool for actually raising funds. It's almost, there's no such thing as a government grant application that doesn't ask some questions about what evidence there is that there's public support for a certain initiative or certain idea or certain project, or that is there any kind of planning in place that supports the government's application for such and such grant funding. So think of the comprehensive plan not only as a set of values and principles, but also almost like a catalog or a prospectus of the different types of projects and policies that, if funded, will help achieve the goals that have been laid out. So again, you mentioned the tax failures as well. I think the comprehensive plan is also a good opportunity to demonstrate that the parish is thinking systemically, thinking holistically, and trying to be efficient with its resources. And hopefully the comprehensive plan can really help make the case that the parish is being more strategic and is more deserving of public trust for collecting the revenue needed to solve the parish's challenges.
So our next question asks, what would we have to do to ensure that the comprehensive plan is enacted into the parish code of ordinances? Is it an item or an election or neither?
Yeah, so it's going to go. So the word is this is going to happen is that the plan draft will be published and presented to the zoning and planning commissions. The goal is to do this in about September, October. And at that time, when it's presented, have it out for a public comment period. And so following the public comment period, after any changes that are made in response to specific public comments, present that again for adoption by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it would then be sent to the Planning Commission, I'm sorry, not the plan, to the Parish Council for their consideration for adoption. And we haven't really mapped out exactly what that looks like, whether it's a resolution of support then followed by an adoption by ordinance or going straight to an ordinance or some other process. But those are a couple of different options that we're going to be laying out in this white paper I mentioned for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Comprehensive plans aren't ever really adopted by referendum or anything like that. But it's possible that maybe some bond projects heavily informed by the comprehensive plan or bond referenda perhaps may come out of the process. And for those, of course, there would have to be a referenda, but that's not for the plan itself. That's simply adopted by the legislative bodies in the parish.
And then we have a comment saying that there's a Scenic Rivers Art Festival starting with a juried art exhibition by local artists at Far Horizons Gallery in Folsom, and it opens on May 1st. And this is to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Louisiana Scenic Rivers Act, the first state to pass a state Scenic Rivers Act. So that's good to know. Thanks, David Campbell, for sharing that with us. We have another question that's asking, what's the difference between a retention pond and a detention pond?
Oh gosh, where's our engineers?
I think I can recall
yeah,
that,
go for it,
Matt.
Nora.
Yeah, so a detention pond is essentially a pond with an orifice more at the bottom where stormwater is expected to run out. And so in between storm events, it's going to be dry, whereas a retention pond, it looks like a normal pond, but the orifice is at a higher level. And so the water stays there almost all the time, but it still plays such a large role in controlling stormwater runoff. And each of them have their advantages and disadvantages. For example, a retention pond needs a larger space versus a smaller detention pond, but they each play a really important role. I hope that helps answer your question. That's just from—
That pretty much answered the questions, Nora.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, the biggest difference between the two is that the detention will remain dry until a storm occurs, and a retention pond will have constant pool of water.
Thanks, Helen. The next question is, what are your strategies for workforce housing? There are huge incentives that have to be put in place in order to get building community to respond to this need.
Yeah, that's a good question. And so by workforce housing, I'm just going to interpret that to mean, housing that's not necessarily geared toward the highest income sector of the market that you think you can sell a house to. That this might include housing that is attainable for folks working moderate or low to moderate income jobs, whether you're a teacher or maybe a police officer or maybe you're a young household, maybe you're out of college recently and just getting started on your own, or maybe you're on a fixed income and can't afford the market rate housing maybe that others can. So that's what I'm going to mean to interpret that to mean. if you had different meaning for it, feel free to share. But some of the more traditional methods in urban areas aren't really applicable in St. Tammany Parish, and so there are mixed income or affordable housing developments that occur in cities where the cities qualify for something called low-income housing tax credits or new markets tax credits. I think because my understanding is because of the demographic makeup of St. Tammany Parish, it being such a high wealth, high income parish, that it doesn't qualify for those types of housing grants. Helen, if that's changed or if that's slightly different than the reality, feel free to weigh in. But I know that, for instance, we spoke with Habitat for Humanity about their challenges. One of the big challenges is finding land that's affordable, to build a single family modest home for someone of modest means to be able to afford to live in. And so one strategy can be the parish offering low interest loans to develop. This is something that a lot of communities have done is fund a trust fund to help subsidize housing that's deed restricted, affordable for these types of households that have those needs. That doesn't have to be done, for like it doesn't have to be a 40-unit apartment building. It could be a single family home that looks just like every other home, or at least doesn't stand out too much in an ordinary neighborhood. And so there are a number of different strategies. Actually, if you refer to the parish's assessment of fair housing, it's a report that we'd be happy to direct you to if you're unable to locate it on the parish website. But it contains a number of different recommendations from 2017 for the parish to expand its support for developers of this type of housing, whether it's Habitat for Humanity or other nonprofit or other agencies that are looking to house folks of more moderate means. I think, Nora, that's a report we can probably create a page for on the project website. We should probably have a list of all different plans that we're referring to in these calls and these meetings.
Sure,
so that's
absolutely.
something. Yeah, we'll work on making sure that's easily available on the parish website, on the project website.
Great. And then we had some Jean Belisario, who's also one of our steering committee members, say in response to the previous question that the parish council will pass an ordinance after the zoning commission approves it. So that's good to know. And then we have a couple more comments that I'll get through. It seems that what we have left is some comments, and then I'm happy to read through them. And so from Roderick Scott, we have a comment to change, in page 26. I believe you're referring to the document that there was an example of Madisonville for non-structural flood hazard mitigation and flood risk reduction. But Madisonville has not elevated very many buildings, while Mandeville has over 80% elevated. So
yeah,
it's good to know.
Yep. That's the benefit of having a lot of historic housing stock, is that, way back when people built higher up in those more flood prone areas, certainly that was more common, and our current standards don't require that as often.
And then the next comment is referencing the goals in efficient development and saying that equally important to citing higher intensity development near high capacity transportation is to have development with higher drainage impact cited near high capacity drainage corridors. And that this implies the importance of long-term development of high capacity drainage corridors.
That's a terrific point. Yeah, wherever you're locating a use that's going to create a lot of additional water that needs to be drained, whether it's because you're building a large building or a large parking lot or something similar, making sure that the surrounding area can drain the water that's going to fall on that site when it's developed. That's a really good point.
And then under excellent governance, there's a comment that says training is more than just public boards. Government staff in general need that training as well. For instance, teaching the school board about planning is modestly helpful, but training the superintendent and his staff will be far more helpful. Same for things like fire districts, parish government, etc. Teaching the boards to expect staffs trained in planning, not so much to expect the boards to do the planning themselves.
Got it. Yep, that's a good point. That sounds like a comment from a board member.
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess, but no, I think you're right. We can absolutely expand the language to make sure that staff aren't getting let off the hook, certainly.
And then another comment on our integrated drainage, the third bullet, the wording is awkward, so that's something that we will definitely look into. Good to know. And then finally, there's a comment that just said that Medline would have caused a lot more problems than money that would have come into the parish. Again, we understand that this is a highly political issue, but just wanted to read that out there.
Yeah. I got a question at a recent zoning commission meeting about is a new house built, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I think I gave some long-winded answer, but the short answer is it depends, right? Would Medline have caused just benefits and no costs? Of course, developments have benefits and costs, and so it depends if the benefits outweigh the costs. But we hope that the guidance coming out of this plan can make it easier for the public and decision makers to rely on some shared tools, shared policy and principles for really weighing those costs versus their benefits.
Great. Two more questions that I see. Will we be forced soon by DEQ and EPA to change those over 60,000 septic tanks? There was a plan before Katrina to have large systems started, but Katrina stopped that.
I don't know the answer to that question. Helen might know. By forced, are you talking about a consent decree or kind of budgeting a certain percentage of parish revenue? I'm guessing is what we mean by that.
We've had some incentive or some programs in certain areas to help citizens connect to central water and sewer when it became available. But there's different projects that took place. Some have not flourished to be able to be done. And I think that some were started before Katrina.
And then the last question that we have here is asking, is it possible to mandate that parish council members as well as parish and zoning members are required to attend training in state law and hydrologic or traffic issues?
So I believe they're already required to undergo training and planning generally and decision making and what the law is and what their roles are for. But I don't know to the extent that it requires a specific level of training in hydrology or flood risk. And so it's an interesting suggestion, and we can look into more detail what the existing requirements are and where they may be lacking in that area. And then maybe we'll explore what could happen beyond that. It's an interesting suggestion.
Great. And so right now I don't have any questions up here. So we'll give it a couple of minutes because we do have until 7:30 to answer all your questions. But I do want to let you know that, this entire meeting is going to be recorded and put online so you can go back and rewatch it. We have our public webinar tomorrow at the same time to make sure that if anybody couldn't make today's meeting, they're able to make tomorrow's meeting. And so again, if you feel that, someone might be interested in anything that we talked about today, please share that we're having the meeting tomorrow. And then you can always reach us on our website. We have a contact us button that you can click, and then you can send in questions, concerns. We've received a lot of comments for people to speak with us, for us to speak at neighborhood association meetings or other organization meetings. And so we've been able to do that. And so feel free to reach out to us at any time, and to subscribe to the newsletter, because that you'll receive the updates through there, and then you won't have to check the website regularly. Matt, do you have anything to say? We don't seem to have any questions.
Yeah, no, I mean, certainly no need for everyone to stick around if all the questions have been responded to. I just want to thank everyone for their engagement and really sticking it out. I've seen a number of names show up at multiple meetings, and I think it's really a really good sign that there's so many really committed folks taking their own time to participate. And so want to acknowledge that. And yeah, we'll be back tomorrow at 6 o'clock. You can register for tomorrow's meeting or pass around the newsletter we sent out to any friends or networks that would be interested in participating. We're also going to be doing a number of in-person engagement events in June when we introduce a number of different growth scenarios to talk about the where of these land use policies. We've been talking a lot about the what at a high level, and then we're going to, as this process moves along, get into more specifics about, okay, if we have a policy that says zoning or development should occur in a different way in a flood area or a critically sensitive area prone to flooding versus up on a hill, where are we talking about exactly, and what data are we using to kind of direct decisions on place A versus place B getting a certain type of policy influencing it. So we haven't announced those dates yet. We can schedule them, but they will be likely half day or all day events over a weekend in June to present some of those ideas on where in the form of growth scenarios. If the parish grows by 20,000 versus 30 versus 50,000 people, where will all those homes go? Where will the jobs they commute to be located? So we look forward to having those meetings in person in a couple of months.
Great. And with that, unless Helen, you have anything else to add, I'd like to say thank you again for everyone joining us tonight, and hopefully we'll see some of you tomorrow.
Have a good evening.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you all. Have a good night.